Good morning, everyone. It's always a blessing to be able to get to come down here and, spend time with fellow Christians and sing songs of praise and glory to God. I'm always edified. We just had a singing over at Central Friday night, and so, when all of God's singers get home, I just look around everybody's here and everybody that was over there, and I just get so excited because I just think of that day one day in the future. So I got some news for you, both this morning, tonight, next week, both morning and night. I'm going to be here preaching for y'all. So I get y'all 2 weeks in a row. When Danny was texting me, he's like, the only way we can do it in August is the week right after you get to be here. And I was like, that's fine. It gives me a chance to do a series. And so I was trying to figure out what I want to do, if I want to do a series on the Sermon on the Mount, or maybe one of the Paul's epistles and this kind of stuff. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I come across, I can't remember exactly what it was that I came across. But anyways, it led me to the book of Hosea. And so if you want to go ahead and open up to the book of Hosea, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be studying this book in depth. We're going to get through the whole book. And now, if you've done any study of the book of Hosea before, you're going to realize that there's going to be some points where you're going to want to go, there's going to be some times, and it's perfectly fine. You're probably going to see me do it a little bit. If you feel like you need to just shake off the little weirdness, it's fine. Go ahead. Nobody's going to judge you, because there are some weird things in Hosea that, it gets your skin crawling, because the book of Hosea is about God's love, but the judgment and the punishment that the people who have left their first love is going to have to endure. So we're going to go through Hosea. Today we're going to go through the first 3 chapters, and it's going to be real quick. And then tonight we're going to go through, I can't remember, but we're going to get through a couple more chapters tonight. But we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together. So, just a little backdrop about the book of Hosea. So, Hosea takes place about the same time as other prophets like Amos, a little bit after Jonah, the same time as, I believe, Isaiah and Micah. So there's some other prophets going on at the same time. And his name, Hosea's name, means salvation. And if that kind of sounds familiar to you, it also, the name Hosea, Joshua, and Jesus all come from the same original name, which was Yehoshua, or Joshua, and then Yeshua, which is Jesus, and they all mean salvation. While the audience was the same for Amos and Hosea, there were some differences. Amos was from Judah, and Hosea appears to have been from Israel. While Amos showed little patience with Israel, Hosea shows great patience. And it's kind of reminiscent of both John the Baptist and Jesus. John the Baptist kind of had no patience for the people, and Jesus had a lot of patience for the people. But in this first lesson, the first of 4 on Hosea, we'll see why Hosea was so sympathetic, even as he condemned Israel for their sins. So let's look at Hosea himself. Let's try to figure out a little bit about him. So Hosea chapter 1, verse 1. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, the son of Beri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. All right, that's about all we know about Hosea's background. There's not a lot there, but we know his father's name was Beri, but we don't really know anything about, which tribe he came from, because, there were 12 tribes originally. 10 of them went with Israel, so we don't know which one he was from there. Some think he may have actually been from the tribe of Levi, given his high regard for the priestly duties we're going to find throughout Hosea. But not much we know about Hosea. We see that he is going to get married. We can read of his wife Gomer in verse 3. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblam, and she conceived and bore him a son. So again, don't know much about Gomer. We don't really know much about the background of Gomer. We just know that she came from, as we're going to read in verse 2, when the Lord first spoke to Hosea, the Lord said, Hosea, go and take yourself a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom, for the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord. There's no real indication that Gomer was actually, a harlot before she got married. She just had a background that would make her inclined to that lifestyle. But we know that she's not going to have. You can already see it being set up that it's not going to be very good for their future. Then we can go through and starting in verse 4, we're going to see that Hosea has some kids. The first one is shown up in verse 4. And the Lord said to him, call his name Jezreel, for in just a little while I will punish the house of Jehu for the blood of Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. So we have Jezreel, a son of his. In verse 6, Gomer conceived again and bore a daughter, and the Lord said to him, call her name No Mercy, or Lu Ra'amah, for I will no more have mercy on the house of Israel to forgive them at all. So we have a son, then a daughter, and then in verse 8, we're going to see that there is another son. And when she had weaned No Mercy, she conceived and bore a son, and the Lord said, call his name Not My People, or Lo Am I, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. So we have a son, Jezreel, Lo Ru'amah, a daughter, and then Lo Am I, another son. And through this family, we're going to see the story of Israel being played out. And this is kind of the basic message of Hosea. So like I said before, this is not, you can see how it's already playing out. It's not looking very pretty. If you want to look at the background, I should have mentioned a little bit for the actual kingdom of Israel. You can go and read 2 Kings chapters 14 through 17 and 2 Chronicles 26 through 29, and that'll give you a little bit of a history. But the northern kingdom was on its last legs. It's really close to the end because most place Hosea lived in about 750 to 725 BC, which is just right before Israel is destroyed. But it's on its last leg. There's not much more. The sin is just rampant, as you can read in Amos. Religious, moral, and political corruption was rampant. It's just absolutely awful what's happening here. And one word really sums up the condition of the nation of Israel, and that is what is going to be mentioned 13 times throughout this book of Hosea, either harlotry or whoredom. So the key to understanding this book is the analogy made between Hosea's experience with Gomer and the Lord's experience with Israel. This analogy is, as I mentioned, it's going to be described in chapters 1 through 3, and it serves as the backdrop to chapters 4 through 14, the rest of the book. So with this brief introduction to the book of Hosea, let's now dive in deep. Be ready to shake a little bit, get the gross feeling off. Let's dive in deep and start reading in Hosea chapter 1. We already read verse 1, so we're going to start in verse 2. When the Lord first spoke to Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, go take to yourself a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom, for the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. And the Lord said to him, call his name Jezreel, for in just a little while I will punish the house of Jehu for the blood of Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. And on that day I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. She conceived again and bore a daughter, and the Lord said to him, call her name No Mercy, for I will no more have mercy on the house of Israel to forgive them at all. But I will have mercy on the house of Judah, and I will save them by the Lord their God. I will not save them by bow or by sword or by war or by horses or by horsemen. When she had weaned no mercy, she conceived and bore a son. And the Lord said, Call his name not my people, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people, it shall be said to them, Children of the living God. And the children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together, and they shall appoint for themselves one head, and they shall go up from the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. All right. So we're shown the whole story here, the whole backdrop. We're given all the kids, all three of them. But Hosea is first commanded to marry a wife of harlotry. Her name was Gomer. And if the parallel between Gomer and Israel, like I mentioned before, is exact, then she was not necessarily a harlot at the time of marriage, but her background would prompt her to become one. And she certainly does become one, and she does symbolize what Israel has become. So Gomer bears her three children. Jezreel, which means God scatters or God sows. His name prefigured God's judgment on the ruling house of Israel. He's going to take them and he's going to spread them out. And if you think about what Assyria did to Israel, they took Israel out of their homeland and spread them all up into Europe. Just like sent them way out and just spread them everywhere. And they brought in other peoples, the people who would marry in, who become Samaritans, and into their homeland. But they take them and they spread them out. God scatters Israel. The daughter, Lo Ruhamah, which means no mercy, her name describes God's attitude towards Israel, as we read there in verse 6 and 7. God's not going to have any mercy for Israel. If you go and read the stories that we have in the Bible of how Assyria came in, and if you look at history of what Assyria did, it was very gruesome. There was no mercy involved in this scattering of Israel. But he does have mercy on Judah. Some suggest that both this daughter, no mercy, and the next son, not my people, were actually not Hosea's because of the language. In Jezreel it says she bore Hosea Jezreel, but these other ones she just had them. So it's possible that these are not even Hosea's own children. But Gomer had definitely at this point in time become a harlot. As we can read in Hosea chapter 2, verse 4, Upon her children I will have no mercy because they are children of whoredom. The second son, Lo-ammi, or not my people, God declares his rejection of Israel. They had so many other gods, lowercase g gods, other idols that we're going to read about later, like Baal, not Baal, like a bale of hay, B-A-A-L, Baal, like a bouncy ball. That God is like, okay, you want them? Fine. You're going to be spread out. You're going to go into ruin because of these. He has rejected Israel. So that's pretty harsh stuff, You're not my people. I'm not going to have any mercy on you. Now your brothers over here, Judah, I'm going to have mercy on them, but no mercy on you. I'm going to scatter you. You're going to be gone from your homeland. That's not mercy. That's like, wow, that's pretty harsh. Then we get to verse 10, where God does something really amazing. And this is why I say this first part here shows God's character, God's love. Because even though they're going to be cast off, they're going to be spread across the face of the earth, God promises a restoration. And there might be a reference to the restoration from Assyrian and Babylonian captivity later when they come back. But there's also another one that we can look at in Romans chapter 9. We're going to look over there real quick in Romans chapter 9. Romans 9, look at verse 25. As indeed he says in Hosea, those who are not my people I will call my people, and her who is not beloved I will call beloved. And in the very place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there will be called sons. There they will be called sons of the living God. And jump over to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 10. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. He's going to restore Israel. We are spiritual Israel. He has restored Israel back to what he has said. And he is still restoring. Every time we go out and we convert someone else, they are grafted into that root stock of Abraham, becoming part of Israel. So there's a little bit of love. I mean, a lot of love, really, if you look at this. But this is the story that we're going to be looking at in great detail as we move into chapter 2 here. Let's start in verse 1 of chapter 2 of Hosea. Say to your brothers, you are my people, and to your sisters, you have received mercy. Plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband, that she had put away her whoring from her face and her adultery from between her breasts, lest I strip her naked, and make her as in the day she was born, and make her like a wilderness, and make her like a parched land, and kill her with thirst. Upon her children also I will have no mercy, because they are children of whoredom. For their mother has played the whore, she who conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers who give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. Therefore I will hedge her up away with thorns, and I will build a wall against her so that she cannot find her paths. She shall pursue her lovers, but not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then she shall say, I will go and return to my first husband, for it was better for me then than now. And she did not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the wine, and the oil, and who lavished on her silver and gold, for which they use her ball. Therefore I will take back my grain in its time, and my wine in its season, and I will take away my wool and my flax, which were to cover her nakedness. Now I'll uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and no one shall rescue her out of my hand. And I will put an end to all her mirth, her feasts, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her appointed feasts. And I will lay waste her vines and her fig trees, of which she said, These are my wages, which my lovers had given to me. I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall devour them. And I will punish her for her feast days of the Baals, and she burned offerings to them, and adorned herself with her ring and jewelry, and went after her lovers, and forgot me, declares the Lord. Shake it off. Ugh. There's a lot of stuff in there that it should, if it doesn't make you go, bleh, you maybe need to do some reconsideration, because this is how God views sin. There's condemnation here for both Gomer and subsequently Israel's sinful conduct. Charges of harlotry and adultery. There's going to be no mercy on her children as they're children of harlotry. And this is just God's rage for Israel's unfaithfulness. And it's described in terms of an enraged husband who learns not only of his wife's adultery, but that the children are not his own. And then we read, starting in verse 6, this punishment that's going to be for his sinful conduct. Anybody know what the punishment is for adultery in the Old Testament? Death. Death was the punishment. I'd say there's being pretty merciful, because he doesn't say going to necessarily kill her, going to drive her to that point, but death is the punishment for harlotry. We can see in verses 6 through 13, God is going to prevent Israel from finding her lovers, those she has run off to, like Baal and Molech and Ashtoreth, all these other gods, these idols that they have gone to. It's going to prevent her from finding them. God will take away the blessings that he has provided to Israel. God will destroy what Israel has used to commit spiritual harlotry, taking away, all this ability, taking away even the energy she has, taking away her food, taking away her clothing, back to the ground, driving her down. Israel's sin, if we go and we look through the Bible, you can just read over and over and over and over, was idolatry. They would leave God and go to these other gods, these idols. They would go to Baal, who was like the storm god, and pray for rain when they should have been relying on God to provide the rain. They would go to Molech and sacrifice their children, their babies, in order to somehow acquire this blessing of fertility when they should have been relying on God. They would go to Ashtoreth and be praying for all other kinds of things. And so all of these gods, I keep saying gods, lowercase g, fake gods, these idols, these false things when they should have been relying on God. And God viewed this as harlotry, as adultery. This is not a pretty sight for those who leave God when they should be staying with him. Again, after we have this I want to say dark view of what God is going to do to Israel, we pick up again in verse 14. Therefore, behold, I will allure her, I will bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. And there I will give her her vineyards, and make the valley of Achor a door of hope. And there she shall answer as in the days of her youth, as at the time when she came out of the land of Egypt. And in that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband, and no longer call me my Baal or my Lord. For I will remove the names of the Baals from her mouth, and they shall be remembered by name no more. And I will make for them a covenant on that day with the beasts of the field and the birds of the heavens and the creeping things of the ground. And I will abolish the bow and the sword and war from the land. And I will make you lie down in safety. And I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. And in that day I will answer, declares the Lord, I will answer the heavens, and they shall answer the earth, and the earth shall answer the grain, the wine, and the oil, and they shall answer Jezreel. And I will sow her for myself in the land, and I will have mercy on no mercy. And I will say to not my people, you are my people. And he shall say, you are my God. Wow. The amount of punishment that God is going to show to Israel, and then he's going to turn right back around because he loves them. That's why I say Hosea, even though it makes you go, bleh, it is a book about God's love for his people. Hosea is charged to love an adulterous woman, just like God chose to love Israel, who always left him. God is going to use a wilderness. If you study what a wilderness symbolizes, it symbolizes chaos and destruction, because there's nothing good in a wilderness, just death and decay. He's going to use this chaos, this death and decay, to bring her back to him. Just as he did in the days of Moses and Joshua, he sent them to wander in the wilderness for 40 years in order that they would come back to him. God will cure her of using the language of Baal worship He's going to cast out these false gods. They're not even going to be there's not even going to be their language used anymore. God will establish a covenant of peace and safety. And he's going to betroth Israel to himself once again. God will once again bless them and be merciful to them as his people. While there may be references to the restoration from captivity, like I referenced earlier, when they're going to come back to Jerusalem and to Judah and Jerusalem and live there again and rebuild the temple and this kind of stuff, it foreshadows the age of the Messiah. Because like I mentioned earlier, under the old law, the only thing that, if there was adultery, death had to take place. That's the only way that would break a covenant contract. Jesus, who is still betrothed, because he is God and God is him and the Holy Spirit, all this weird, how that works, I don't know. He comes to this earth and dies for Israel, saving Israel from having to be killed themselves. And then he is raised from the dead so Israel can be once again rejoined. Isn't that amazing? The Bible, doesn't matter what Hollywood or Bollywood or whatever are going to produce, there is no love story greater than the Bible. What God has done for his people, for the world. It is amazing. We can continue reading in chapter 3 and see what Hosea does. And the Lord said to me, "Go again, love a woman who is loved by another man and is an adulteress, even as the Lord loves the children of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love cakes of raisins. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver, and a homer and a lectith of barley. And I said to her, You must dwell as mine for many days. You shall not play the whore or belong to another man. So will I also be to you. For the children of Israel shall dwell many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or pillar, without ephod or household gods. Afterward the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king. And they shall come in fear to the Lord, to his goodness in the latter days." Hosea is symbolizing God. Gomer symbolizes Israel. Hosea is charged to love this woman who goes and leaves him, has children that she will pretend that are his, that are not even his. He goes back. He takes her. He spends, if you look at the actual amount of money that he would spend compared to today's amount, it's quite a bit of money that he pays to bring her back. He takes her back. And there's gonna be some strict rules that he lays down, but he still takes her back. And this symbolizes God's willingness to take Israel back. Hosea, as we read there in verses 4 and 5. Although, like I said, there's going to be some strict rules he's going to lay down. There's not going to be any kings and sacrifices. There's going to be some hard times they're going to go through, but Israel will return. And they did return, and they seek the Lord, and they seek David as their king, who is the Messiah. In these first 3 chapters, God used Hosea to teach Israel an object lesson, because I guarantee by this time, many years had passed, I'm sure everybody knew of that prophet of God that's married to an adulteress and hasn't fulfilled the law. Wow, what kind of a prophet is that? Hosea is teaching them a lesson. Through Hosea's experience with Gomer, God provided Israel a concrete illustration of what his relationship with Israel has been, is currently, and will be. Israel had played the harlot, but God would take her back. Keeping this analogy in mind, this amazing story of cheating and then buying her back and love, keeping this analogy in mind, is going to assist with our understanding of the remaining chapters of the book of Hosea. And there's a lesson to be learned from this analogy. And that lesson is to be learned of how God views cheaters. I say cheaters, not necessarily somebody who cheats in like a card game or something, but somebody who cheats on their spouse. I don't know how much you all know about the ancient Jewish wedding customs. Basically what would happen is, a man would see a woman, be like, hey, I really like you. So they go and they sit with the woman's father. They draw up a contract. We call it a contract. It was really a covenant. And a covenant is different than a contract in the sense that if this side breaks their end of the deal, this side is still obligated to hold up their end. So they would sit down, they would draw up this covenant, and they'd all sign it, and then they'd drink some what would be grape juice to seal this covenant. Then as soon as they signed it, they are legally bound together. They are legally married. But the husband would have to go away. It would be about a year's time because he would be going to build the honeymoon suite, basically. He'd be building the bridal chamber. And this time, at this time, about this year's period of time, the bound by legal marriage wife, we kind of equate this to maybe engagement or something, would wait at home for her husband to come and get her. That sounds awfully similar to what Jesus is doing for us. At that moment, when we have chosen to follow Jesus, we are bound with him forever. We have when we are immersed, when we are baptized in the watery graves of baptism, we become married to Jesus. We are one with him. Right now he is gone. He's preparing a place for us, and we know that if he's preparing a place for us, he will come again and get us. We are betrothed to Christ. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, we see this idea. Paul is telling the people at Corinth, starting in verse 2, "For I feel a divine jealousy for you, since I betrothed you to one husband to present you as a pure virgin to Christ." We are betrothed to Christ. But we have to take caution. Because just like Paul is going to show some worry here in verse 3. He says, "But I am afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by his cunning, your thoughts will be led astray from a sincere and pure devotion to Christ." We too can become spiritual harlots if we leave our first love, if we are not careful. So I ask you this: are you being true to your husband, to Christ, to the one you are betrothed to, you are legally bound with? Are you being faithful? May the words of the Lord in Hosea, verses 19 and 20, encourage us to remain faithful forever. He says, "I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and justice, in loving kindness and mercy. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord." Are you being faithful? Have you decided to join this, sign the covenant to become one with Christ? I've been doing this lesson about what God does if you are not faithful, and it may scare you a little bit, and you may be like, "Well, are you sure? Am I sure?" Yes, I'm going to tell you right now, as one who has signed that covenant myself, there's nothing greater than signing it. If you have left your first love and need to repent, or you want to sign the comment. If you want to be immersed in the water grave of baptism and rise again, forgiven of your sins, right now is the perfect time. Why don't you come to the front as we stand and as we sing?